You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode number 66, we'll be going around the league discussing the latest Overwatch League news and cap off our host rankings with our top 5 Overwatch League teams going into Season 2. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight for our live show on Twitch. And as always, thank all of our repeat listeners. So, Slambo may have found his way out from the audio abyss this past week, but he's not feeling too well, unfortunately. I guess everyone is sick in the household, so he will not be joining us tonight. And we hope he feels better soon, but joining me tonight and back at it again is my co-host Spider. And Spider, we've had some things happen. The Abyss is trying to, claim Slambo again. You're back after last week, but how's this past week been treating you, man?
It's been pretty good. I mean, it's been a pretty slow week overall, ending January, starting February. February gets a little crazy in the beginning because we have like my birthday, we have like some other stuff planned, and then we have some other birthdays coming up, and there's just a lot of stuff going on now. But luckily last week was pretty slow. I actually got to play a little bit of Anthem. I tried a little bit of Apex today, but other than that, played a bunch of Overwatch. Edinar and I played together almost all of, I think it was Saturday night, and then I had a couple friends join that way, and I've been working on my healer account, learning, trying to focus on Lucio, because Lucio is like the one healer that I don't feel comfortable with, and really I actually ended up playing DPS a lot that night, because we just kept getting games where we would have like 2 healers insta-lock, and then one of my friends is a tank player, so he would play tank, and then somebody else would pick off tank. So oddly enough, DPS was like the role that people weren't playing, so I was like, okay, whatever. So that was a lot of fun. I think our standout game was like, we had a defense on Gibraltar where I played Symmetra, and they were like, oh god, it's going to be one of these games. And I was like, look, I am playing Symmetra this map, and they never made it around the corner to point A. And it was so funny because there was this one moment where we had this McCree all the way up top, and he went to high noon, and he stuck out just far enough that all 3 of my turrets just destroyed him. And at that point, hope that sounds a little. Does that sound a little better?
That's good.
Okay, good. Just let me know, man. I'll turn it down.
Yeah, it was just a lot louder then. I don't know why. But it's good.
I don't know. But yeah, that McCree got melted by the Symmetra turrets, and we all like died laughing because we all just turned and looked up at him like, where's the high noon? And then up there, you just see some McCree just fall over dead. So it was a good night. But this week, man, this is going to be a packed week, because there is rumored that a community countdown will be happening at the end of the week, on the weekend, which no official confirmation, but there have been a lot of leaks and a lot of spicy news surrounding that. So I'm sure we'll get an announcement for that. But what about you? Like, how was your week?
It's been pretty good. I've been playing a lot of Diablo 3, actually. So I've been, kind of changing it up a bit. I started with a wizard, and I was like, all right, it's going pretty good. And then my brother-in-law started playing. He rolled a demon hunter, and then we were trying to do duo DPS, which you hit that toughness ceiling really early on. So then I rolled a Z-barb, so I was playing support barbarian, and then I leveled a demon hunter on the side. So now I'm kind of progressing with that, but I've cleared up to greater of 97, trying to get it a little bit further. But man, It took forever to get my Traveler's Pledge, so I could get that 2-set bonus for the extra damage reduction, because that was the one thing that was kind of holding me back. So, other than that, there's been a lot of stuff going on. We have Contenders Trial starting up, and that's seeing a ton of coverage due to Elo Hell, which is, Jane's esports-specific Twitch channel now. Now that he's done, a little bit of rebranding going on. So it's awesome. Like, now we have, Broadcast.gg, we got Elo Hell. There's just so much coverage now for the Tier 2 and Tier 3 scene, and I cannot be happier, and production value has been pretty damn sick. So, happy to see that, and, honestly, Overwatch League is right around the corner, I'm starting to feel it. But... you did mention that, we heard rumors about the preseason or, community countdown or whatever. I actually don't have that in the show notes just because, we don't know if it's actually happening or not. So, who knows? If we're going to hear something, it has to be, within the next couple of days, you would assume, because at this point, it's just kind of been radio silence.
Surprise. I mean, like you said, we have to hear something because I'm sure they want to start hyping it up and getting it out, because while we fault Overwatch and, Blizzard for not advertising contenders and stuff, they are always been over the top for Overwatch League, like billboards, not really commercials on TV, but we've seen commercials online, stuff like that, like ads and stuff. So I have to imagine that they want to hype up this, preseason light that they're basically putting together. So I hope maybe tomorrow that we'll get something like maybe a tweet or hey, here's our community countdown, come see all the new teams play. By the way, we're going to have a couple of skill games, stuff like that. I would say honestly, if they don't put something out by tomorrow, it would be a huge miss.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's news, and we got a couple of Path to Pro news that I felt like is worth bringing up, because this is something that you and I have been kind of discussing in regards to our staff logic, because we've had a little bit of back and forth about a certain individual and whether or not he's, I wouldn't say necessarily already, but more, discussion was more, does he have a better shot at getting called up with one organization as opposed to another? And that person in question is none other than MegaChew. So Mayhem Academy have looked to add some extra firepower to their lineup, and they've turned to former XL2 Academy Flex DPS player MegaChew. So MegaChew is the first of XL2's recently released players to join a new team, and this is a team that is coming off of a 1-4 performance in Contenders Season 3 North America, where they had failed to make the playoffs. Now, that performance was the team's worst finish in 2018 throughout the 3 seasons, with their only win in Season 3 coming against the winless Kungarna. So, what's interesting about Mayhem Academy is this is a team in, North America. They're an academy team, and they have yet to earn a winning record in the group stage. Their best finish was 2-3. Not the greatest showings for an academy team, but they did get 2 playoff berths in regards to the contender seasons this past year. And despite how, out of sync they felt like they were this past season, trying to determine whether or not they were a GOATS team or if they're going to try to counter GOATS, neither of them really worked in regards to finding an identity. But despite that poor performance, this team is guaranteed a spot in the Contenders 2019 Season 1, as are all of these affiliate teams. Now, MegaChew will be joining Shax and Apply on the DPS line. Of course, Apply is under a 2-way contract, which may or may not have the biggest effect in regards to his Overwatch League playtime. It's still a very heavy Korean roster, which is definitely important to note in that regard. And this marks the second move that Mayhem Academy have made, as, they recently called up their coach, Promise. Now he's going to serve as, an assistant coach for Florida Mayhem, so big call up there. So, really, MegaChew, this is a player, one of the OGs that's been around the block for as long as I can remember, and, at this point, I don't know if it's necessarily a matter of, does he have the ability? It's, how much longer is MegaChew going to be handcuffed to the path to pro? Because it seems like time and time again, like, his name is, like, kind of always in the discussion, but he's not given the opportunity to take that next step. So what do you feel like is the reasoning behind that for a player like MegaChew?
It's hard to say. I mean, the big reason when he was on NYXL2, or just XL2, is they're a whole Korean team. So unless another team bought him out, which I really like MegaChew and I really think he is a good player, but very few teams are going to buy him out, especially going into season 2 where a lot of teams are going Korean focus. That's basically what held him back in previous contender seasons. Now going forward, I think with the Mayhem, even though they are leaning Korean, they have showed they're at least open to other talent. Now whether or not they use that talent from other regions is, yet to be seen, but at least they're willing to keep other talent from, other regions on the roster. So I feel like MegaChew, even though it's like slight, I think he has a better chance of being called up. But there's always been these like bubble players that were, people who have followed the scene have been like, oh, these players deserve to be on an Overwatch League roster. And some of them have made it up and not done real well. Like AKM was probably the most famous one. Now, whether that's AKM's fault or Dallas's failings, that's a whole nother discussion that we can have. But, players like MegaChew, Gods, Crimzo, Buds, players that when you say, you're like, oh yeah, I really know them. They were in the World Cup or, they've done really well in contenders. They're just these bubble players that for some reason can't ever make it into Overwatch League. And I don't know if that's just a failing on the system or a failing on the teams. It's hard to say, but I think MegaChew deserves a chance in the Overwatch League just based on his versatility. Because right now we're entering what could possibly be a very interesting stage 1 with all the changes and stuff, which will go in as a GOATS meta, but basically come out something very different as a possibility. Like we could end up in a dive meta by the end of stage 1. So there is the likelihood that you will need players that have that level of versatility. Now, while he can't be signed for stage 1, that sets him up to be signed in between stage 1 and stage 2 if players are like, oh man, we really can't field what we're needing for stage 2. So I don't think he's necessarily shackled to path to pro, or at least I hope he isn't, because like those players I named before, I feel like MegaChew's kind of top of the list for his dues, other than maybe Gods. Like I feel like Gods is another versatile player who can basically play anything and deserves a shot on an Overwatch League team. And then we'll see if he has what it takes to be in the Overwatch League, because that's the question at the end of the day. Is there's lots of players that we think could be in the Overwatch League, and some of them have tried and not done so well. So it's it's a whole different ball game, and it's fun to speculate. But at the end of the day, I am happy to see that he is out of open division, because that just was like, I felt really bad for him, because there are certain players that really don't deserve to be in open division.
He was subbing.
Right. But he was still in open division. And this was a guy who has been on multiple World Cup teams, multiple teams that have finished in the top 3, for World Cup, or 3 and 5, but whatever. So I am happy to see it. And I feel like Clone Man and Goliath, the other two from XL2, deserve a chance to at least be in contenders again. So we'll see. I am happy that he got this spot, though.
Nothing would make me happier to see, like, everyone that was released from XL2 just form their own team, and then, just force XL2 Academy out.
Back together.
Right.
That's him, Clone Man, Mangachu, Harblue, all of them.
Well, with how well Chicken Cadendes is doing, I don't know if that's gonna happen. But anyways, I feel like the major thing about MegaChew is, on XL2, obviously they're looking for Korean talent. And we'll talk about that here momentarily, because XL2 did make a couple of moves, which is more relevant to, one of the regions that we cover more often on this show, at least in regards to contenders. But coming from XL2, MegaChew's already used to being on, these Korean-type teams. So that does open up more of a possibility for him to get called up if they are going to go for mixed teams. But that being said, I don't know if being on Mayhem Academy is going to be the best position for him to get the nod, primarily just because, well, we've already seen Mayhem Academy basically just outright say, well, we're not actually trying to win, It's just one of those things. They have not put in a strong performance despite having some former Overwatch League pros. And it's just not going to be the best look for MegaChew. But who knows? Maybe this is going to be the piece that they were missing. They just failed to kind of either play the meta or find a good work around the meta at the time in Season 3. So who knows? Like, MegaChew to me is definitely a player that can right the ship for them, but I just don't know if it's enough at this point. But who knows? Maybe one of these seasons, Mayhem Academy will move forward. They'll finish 3-2. You know, that'll be the feather in their cap, and they can move on at that point. But I definitely feel like for players like MegaChew, who have just kind of been just like on the back burner for quite some time, and like Davin is like another big example. You know, the only sole survivor on Team Giganti that's just been stuck in, you know, Contenders Europe. So one of these days, they're going to get called up. I don't know if it's going to be for an expansion team or one of the, you know, original 12 teams. But some point, you know, their number will come up. And hopefully they'll be able to make the most of it. But speaking of XL2 Academy, we do know that they have been pretty busy this past month. You know, in early January, we saw the team release MegaChew, who we literally just talked about, Clone Man, Goliath. They would later go on to remove 3 additional players and currently only have 1 player on their roster, that being Jer. Now, the team had announced, you know, we're going to do tryouts for the Tri-State area, we're going to try to find some local talent, and then on Thursday, the team announced the additions of Yaki and Kirby, formerly known as Bianca. Now, Yaki and Kirby were on the MVP Space roster last season in Contenders Korea, and were with the organization for almost 2 years. Now, Yaki had served as that team's DPS player, Kirby had played off-tank, and, you know, the key thing for me here is, I definitely feel like there's some influence from Nugget, because he is with NYXL right now. So if you're looking at a situation where, okay, who's, you know, someone that's an up-and-comer, and we can move in, also Korean, because it's, you know, NYXL, and, you know, he already has, you know, that relationship with that player already. It's a smart move from XL2 Academy, and I'm pretty excited to see this happen. But at the end of the day, like, there's the questions about whether or not that this signing was primarily done because Saviobi is still due to do his military service. So there could be a DPS opening on NYXL's main roster here. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year. So this could be an easy transition moving forward. But I just want to get your thoughts on these 2 sign-ins overall for XL2. And, you know, you can kind of maybe circle back to the whole homegrown talent for them to drop Korean players, only to sign additional Korean players. Because I know the community has definitely blown it out of proportion to a variable degree. But it does kind of make you just kind of chuckle a little bit.
It does. I mean, you know, the fact that they basically blew away their whole team minus Jer, is funny. And then the first thing they do is they turn around and sign more Koreans. I do think Kirby and Yaki are decent pickups. Like they're good talent to bring over from Contenders Korea to play in NA. But at the end of the day, I'm still waiting to see where this New York talent is. I mean, I have been one of the few people that have actually been like, yeah, whatever. What do they really have to lose? This is the first season of Contenders, stuff like that. And, you know, I fully expected them to do this. Like, I expected them to pick up more Koreans because at the end of the day, well, sure, they're going to basically say, all right, well, we're going to play the local side, but we still want something in the bullpen in case we need players. And of the 2, you kind of pointed that Yaki might be the more likely to be pulled up, but I actually think it's the other way around. I think Kirby could be the more likely to be pulled up because, well, a lot of people love Meko. You know, they still don't have anybody that can fill like a sub off tank role. Whereas if you look at NYXL, and I will talk about this later in my power rankings, they are like armed to the teeth when it comes to DPS, especially with their off-season pickups from XL2. So there's really no need to replace SBB if he goes into when he goes into military service, because they still have crazy amounts of DPS and they have crazy amounts of flexibility. So I think Kirby's the more likely of the 2, at least in the current NYXL roster. Now that could change in the offseason, that could change in mid-season pickups. But right now, looking at it, I don't see NYXL being like, boy, we really need a 6th DPS when we have some of the highest DPS rated players in the world. So, but all in all, like, whatever, they still have a roster full of 3 people, so I can't really comment on the roster at this point. We'll see what the New York locals can do at this point, because that's basic.
It might just be local. I mean, this could just be a Fusion University showcase thing where they sign one player and then he doesn't actually see play and just rides the bench the entire season.
Whatever. I mean, you're still, if you're going to Mendo it out, at least you're on a team. I mean, you're still getting some level of recognition.
But to go back to your point about Kirby being maybe the potential signing of the two, that's true to an extent, but you also have to remember, Nene going back... Okay, this is going to go back a ways, but initially he was a Zarya player, so he can fill that off-tank position. I don't know if he's really done any diva in the side of things,
right.
But yes, I definitely see where you're coming from, just because they don't have, like, a true backup tank really at any position at this point, since they also got rid of Janice, who's, on Washington Justice. So... who knows? Maybe Nene will maybe just fill the Zarya role if he is off-taken on NYXL this season. But it's definitely one of the positions that they don't have a backup. And while it's great that they have one of the better tank duos in the league, every once in a while something might come up. Someone might need a little bit of a break. You need someone to fill in that role. And if you don't have anyone there, then you have like a tank move situation on your hands. And that's not good for anyone. No.
But if there's a team that could possibly pull it off, it might be NYXL. Who knows what else Libero can play at this point? I mean, we've seen Seagull flex from DPS to tank and do pretty well, so I'm not going to rule it out. But yeah, I mean, looking at their current roster, they should probably have a backup tank in some capacity.
Well, moving on, let's take a look at one of their other rivals in the Philadelphia Fusion, who have made a move in regards to their coaching staff. So they have announced the addition of Christopher to their coaching staff, and he will be serving as the team's assistant coach. Now, this is a first coaching gig for Christopher, and this has been a player that's been around since 2016, playing at a top level in Europe Overwatch, and he's played on Snakes as the team's main tank. He also represented the United Kingdom in the World Cup. And what's interesting about this is, he had an opportunity to play this past year for the World Cup at BlizzCon, and he decided to step down from the United Kingdom's starting 7 before BlizzCon to pursue coaching as a full-time gig. So, it's a pretty quick turnaround to basically have your first venture into it, trying to get your feet underneath you, and then basically just making your coaching debut in the Overwatch League. That's just astronomical. You don't imagine, like, that would be the first, opportunity that someone gets, but that just kind of shows you, Christopher has been around the scene for quite some time. And, he's very respected between his peers, and this dates all the way back to, the weekly Overwatch tournament days when he played on the Chavs, who would later go on to get picked up by Hammer Esports, and then that kind of evolved over time. And it's just, it's crazy to see, after all of this, he's made that move, and we've been seeing more and more players kind of stepping out into different roles. And, in some cases, it's been kind of some lateral moves in regards to players staying within an organization, and for Christopher, he's reuniting with the United Kingdom's head coach in Hayes, who is serving as a co-head coach for the Fusion this season. So when we look at this coaching staff, you have Hayes, named... I can never say this guy's name because it has...
Hui?
Sure. Yeah, we'll just go with Hui and BZ on Fusion's coaching staff, and they're going to open up the season, of course, with that Grand Finals rematch against the London Spitfire on February 14th. I cannot wait. But talk about a huge opportunity for Christopher, going from, a very good level, Europe tank to suddenly being kind of like thrust in the forefront and then having a huge opportunity to coach one of the best teams in the Overwatch League as a first-time gig. That's crazy.
That is, I mean, that's a great job promotion right there. I've been a big fan of his tanking since, like you said, back to the Chavs when he was on Mosaic, Six Snakes. Like I've basically followed him as a tank through his whole Overwatch career, and I've been a big fan of his tank play. Like he's basically the EU clone man for what I follow. So I am happy to see that he is transitioning to a coaching role, and it kind of goes to show how important like pro player experience can be as a coaching role. And he's always been like a cerebral level player. Like he's always been one of this, the smarter play tanks. Like he's not like a reinforced style tank where he goes in like swinging. He's not fraggy. Like he's always played like that more cerebral type slow roll tank style. So it leads me to believe that he'll be a very good tank coach. And one of the things that we kind of faulted for Fusion in season 1, more so when they were playing a lot of Fraggy, and even some when they played Sato, was their tank lineup. Like they would dive wrong, they would miss time things, spend ults. Fraggy would be half a map away trying to get kills, while it seems like, hey man, we're still respawning. That level of play. So I think Christopher is going to be a big asset to this team. And while it doesn't personally affect my power rankings, I do think that this could bring a little more consistency to the Fusion, and it does make them a little stronger overhaul. So I am just happy to see Christopher kind of transitioning so smoothly, and I'm sure we'll see other players make that transition just as smoothly in the future.
All right, moving on, we do have an update on Academy teams, and we do know, due to a recent AMA on Reddit, that the Paris Eternal are looking to field an Academy team for Contenders Europe. Now, roster and Brandon is expected to be unveiled here in the coming weeks, so, TBD, it's going to happen, though. But this will be the second Academy team to compete in Europe, the other, of course, being London Spitfires Academy team of British Hurricane. And this announcement marks the third Overwatch League team to announce an Academy team for the 2019 Contenders season, the others being the Guangzhou Charge and the Chengdu Hunters. Now, when we look at Europe, this has always been one of those regions that at times has been too close to call. You've kind of had some mainstays that have been around the scene for quite some time that seem to put in performance after performance, like Team Giganti, an organization that has had a lot of talent getting called up to the Overwatch League. And then you have other mainstays, kind of, I think Angry Titans have probably been one of the better examples of that, who have been around the scene for quite some time as well. So if you are the GM of, this Academy team, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to kind of Frankenstein roster? Or are you going to go out and try to pick up a roster wholesale?
I mean, at this point, you're probably either going to have to pick up a previous lower tiered Contenders roster or just mix and match. And I hope Paris, kind of sticks to their moniker as like EU's team. Like that's basically how they set up their Overwatch League team. So I hope the Eternals Academy team, continues that trend, because I think EU needs like a strong representative to kind of lead the charge into, the tier 2 scene. Because, we talk about, Contenders NA, we talk about Contenders Korea, and, their EU is probably the third biggest region, and they're still one of the least talked about regions. Like, they're not nearly on the level of like South America or Australia and, stuff like that for being not talked about. But EU is kind of that I say more forgotten, like third big region, and there's a lot of talent there. So I feel like if a team with a good Academy team can kind of push the, push the envelope a little more, stick to like a full EU team, not like, the British Hurricane and stuff like that. Go full EU, like buckle down, say, all right, we pulled somebody from Spain, we pulled somebody, true melting pot team. I think regardless of how it turns out, hopefully it turns out well. But regardless of how it turns out, I think that will help the tier 2 scene in EU overall. But I've always been a big supporter of teams taking academy teams just for the chance that it's a good place to pull backup players if you ever need to. And, with a melting pot team, that is highly, that is a big possibility that you will need to at some point. So I'm just happy that they announced it. Unfortunately, like you said, there's not a whole lot of details on it. It's like we don't know players, we don't know branding, we don't know anything other than that they basically said, yeah, we're going to do that. So we'll keep an eye on it for now.
Yeah, and there's been a ton of movement in regards to the Path to Pro scene. So, of course, if you guys want to get caught up to date on all the rebrand and stuff that's been going on, kind of like with Contenders Trials, with North America, a lot of movement there. So, if you need updates, just go to over.gg. But if I'm looking at anyone, I feel like Windstrike team, that's always been one of the tank-heavy teams, and that's what Europe is known for. So if you want to stay true to the identity of the region, that would be the team that I would be looking at signing. Now, granted, they might not have the better performances when you compare them to, the two mainstays of Angry Titans and Team Giganti. But I feel like if you go out and you just try to sign Giganti, that's a little bit too on the nose and too obvious of a pick. I'm gonna assume that they're probably gonna go more middle of the pack, but tons of talent there, and we have started to see a little bit more representation in regards to European talent make their way into the Overwatch League. I think that's going to continue as we continue to progress. But moving on to Overwatch League news, we do know that the All Access Pass is back for Season 2, and it is on sale as of a couple of days ago. So this season's All Access Pass is going to sell for $14.99 and includes an enhanced command center. Now, what does the command center offer you? Well, it gives you the ability to view games from a variety of different angles, including the point of view from any player on the field. You'll also get a discount on Overwatch League merchandise, which is a 20% code that lasts through Halloween this year. You get ad-free viewing of games, a bonus 200 Overwatch League tokens so you can pick up a few skins, as well as what they're calling, some fun new prize-driven challenges throughout the season. And of course, there's going to be some reward incentives there. So, basically what's going on is they have these weekly personal challenges where you can unlock global Overwatch League Twitch emotes. They also have, things that kind of add up over time. Similar to how you would unlock Overwatch League skins that were away skins that this was before, they had it where, if you buy a skin, you get both versions of it. So last year, we saw a lot of bits flying around, and if you're a Twitch Prime member, you can actually get 500 bits if you buy the pass. So, you get a little bit bonus there, and you can use that to, cheer for your favorite team. You could cheer on Hanzhou Spark, who, last time I checked earlier today, they were the top team. Now, granted, this is well before the season is starting, but I don't expect that to actually change. I feel like the Spark have just dethroned Shanghai Dragons, and Dragons are just going to keep plummeting at this point.
Yep.
But that being said, we do know that we're going to get the player point of view.
Okay.
And, I was hoping we were going to get a standalone client, but it's going to be tied to the All Access Pass. Not that that's a bad thing, but was that a surprise to you that they went that route, or were you expecting something different?
Well, I mean, I don't think this rules out the standalone client yet, or at least the integrated game client, because I think from a marketing perspective, you kind of want to have both, because the command center's kind of bonus over the in-game client is you still get the commentating. That's kind of one of the bonuses that we had last year, at least if I remember correctly, that you still had the commentating through most of the feed. Now, they didn't have the POV, so we'll see if that changes, because they haven't specifically said anything like that. But I think at the end of the day, they're still going to put out what we saw with the Overwatch World Cup viewer. So this struck me as a little odd that they are kind of marketing it side by side. Not really side by side, but they did put it in their primary marketing. Now, if you remember last year, they put it in their marketing too, and we didn't get it. They basically removed it, the first day of the season, and was like, "Oh, sorry, we can't do that." But like last year, if you're an Overwatch League fan, this is a good way to support the team. Support your team, support the league. All around, it's good. I do have a few problems with it though, and the first one was the Overwatch World Cup viewer. If they do put that in the game, it does kind of steal a little bit of the thunder from the All Access Pass. Mm-hmm. The other thing I have a problem with, and this mostly deals with how they monetized it, is they mentioned like the personal challenges, the weekly challenges, stuff like that. And a lot of those personal challenges are locked behind the All Access Pass. So of the challenges that we can see now, 5 of the 6 weekly challenges are locked behind owning the All Access Pass. So that is a little, and I get it, like you kind of perpetuate, like, okay, if you spend this, you kind of get in our club. But then of those 5, 3 require you to spend more money to donate bits. Now they do give you some bits, and you can absolutely use that to donate some of them, but you can be sure that more weekly challenges will require more bits. So I feel like it's a little excessive for the average viewer. Like, I get like the upfront costs. You want to see who's supporting it and stuff like that. I was fully behind that last year. I'm fully behind it this year. The fact that you're locking rewards behind a paywall, even if they are just Twitch emotes, is a little excessive to me. And if anybody knows me, I'm not someone that will shy away from spending stuff on Overwatch. I mean, if you've seen my office, you know that's to be true. So if that's like what it is to me, the average viewer has to feel that way too if you actually start to look at it. That being said, you can kind of recoup the initial cost pretty easily if you plan on buying merch. And it's with that 20% off coupon. You can get that $15 back real quick if you use that 20% coupon on a couple of things. So I am happy to see that they put that in there. And I mean, it looks like it's working. As of this morning, it looks like they've made over $11,000 in bits donations alone, which for something that's been launched over the weekend where there are no games being played is obviously a good amount of money. So I do have some, pyramid-y scheme type problems with the way that the monetization structure works, because I feel like if you just want to donate bits, you shouldn't be, locked out of some of the emotes and stuff like that. Like, you should be able to participate in it. But beyond that, like I said, if you're an Overwatch League fan, you should probably just buy this anyway. I mean, you get paid chat, which is a bonus. You get the command center. You do have access to spend the bits, but I do have a little, like, once I started sitting down and actually looking at it, I was like, this is not necessarily what you want right now, Blizzard. Like, you're not doing yourself any favors once people really start looking into this. So I do have a little bit of problem with the way they monetize it overall, not necessarily All Access Pass.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get, I don't know if they're gonna give us, like, additional skins, kind of like what they did last year, because basically the pass last year just paid with itself just through the skins, with how many varieties you got. But, one of the things that, we've been waiting on is that top-down view, and it looks like we're probably not going to get it with this either, so there's also that, so that's very unfortunate. I just hope, for the sake of everyone's sanity, though, that we get the point of view of, the actual, like, camera looking down, and you could see all of the players, the one that, we really didn't need, but, you could see, like, the mouse box for Ryu Jaehan, and you could just, you could see the emotion on Effect's face all the time. But, I'm hoping we get the standalone client for the player point of view. But either way, $14.99 isn't that much money at the end of the day. And if you need, a way to use that promo code, now's the time to use it, because we have new Overwatch League gear available on the Blizzard Gear Store now. And, there's been a fair amount of complaints already about this, which I'll get into. But, we're 10 days out from the start of Season 2. We got new Overwatch League gear available that includes all of the expansion team gear. You can get your jerseys, all of that good stuff. So for the replica jerseys, those cost $59.99. They have both home and away versions this year. You also have player replica jerseys, which are going for $84.99. Now, as of earlier today, I was looking, okay, what's selling? What's the top seller? DeFran's jersey is currently the top seller on the Blizzard Gear store. And, I'm sure you probably only have one thing to say about that.
I was gonna put the "Let's Go, Dude" clip, but I ran out of time. So let's go, dude. You get my scuffed version instead. But I'm happy about that too. I actually thought it would be one of the Sparks jerseys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have thought the same thing, to be honest, and that was not the case. So Atlanta merch doing pretty good early on. Now, that being said, when we look at the top three, so DeFran's jersey is number 1. That is the home version. At number 2, we have the Atlanta Reign jersey, the no player name, no anything. And then third, we have Vancouver Titans. So that rounds out the top 3. So expansion teams doing pretty good to start off the gear sales so far. And we do know that all this is run through Fanatics right now. And a lot of people are not happy in regards to, some of the merchandise that's available. There's been a lot of complaints about shipping costs outside of the United States because it's been pretty astronomical if you're trying to buy a jersey or really anything. But the thing that stood out the most to me is when I was looking at the Atlanta jersey. When it comes to the Fnatic jerseys, when it comes to the text itself, they either are in black or they're in white. And if you look at the home jersey for Atlanta Reign, like the front part of Atlanta Reign, you can see like more white coloring on the text, but on the back it's black. And it's very hard to see with the color tones on that jersey, and it just does not look that good. As opposed to the away version, which obviously, the away is primarily white, so you don't have to run into that issue, but it is an eyesore. I don't know if you had a good chance to take a look at any of the Atlanta player jerseys, but it's pretty rough.
Yeah, I was actually really thrown off by a lot of the inconsistencies almost right away. Like I started looking at the store and I was like, oh man, look at these Spark jerseys, look at these Atlanta jerseys, and I was like, something doesn't really look right with these. And when I pulled up like actual player pictures of actual pictures that we've seen, like even LA Valiant, we got a post of like the old jersey and the new jersey, and then one on the store doesn't match really either one of them. So there is a lot of inconsistencies right now, and honestly that's caused me to hold back from buying it. Like I was actually gonna start looking at like a Spark jersey because I eventually will get the 20% off coupon. I haven't got it yet, but I assume I will get it. It said it's coming out in 14 days from when you buy the pass, so patience is a virtue. But I was really thrown off by it, and then I started looking at other stuff. I was like, well, maybe I want like a hat or something, or maybe I'll pick up something for the kids, because Logan's like favorite shirt right now is this Reaper shirt, so maybe I'll find something for them. And like the rest of like their catalog outside of jerseys and like men's t-shirt is pretty lacking. Like they have like one style of women's shirt, they have like one style of kids shirt. It's pretty sad to see it launch in this state. Now I do hope that they will add stuff later, but overall I wasn't that impressed, and I will wait. Like I have no problem waiting, especially until I get that coupon, but even beyond that, like I know there's going to be a winter sale. I know there's going to be like a Black Friday sale at this point, and as long as I don't need them right now, which I don't, I'm content to wait, because hopefully by then they will get the inconsistencies sorted out. But all that being said, the one thing I am really pumped for is they have a large variety of collector's items, like signed jerseys, signed pictures, signed hats, like actual collector's items, which that is, come on, look at me. You've seen my office. Collector's items I might go in for. So overall, like as a whole on this store, I am glad that it has its own store front. I am glad that, from a technical side, it is much easier to navigate. The initial offerings are a little lacking, but it's in the right direction. So, and I'm not going to judge them too harshly just because the season hasn't started, and they will get this stuff figured out. It's just personally, I'm not. I know you've already bought stuff, but I'm not going to buy anything, especially until I see what you get, because you did order a Spark jersey. So I'm curious to see what the actual color looks like.
Right.
Maybe they're just bad photos, and that's as someone who has taken pictures at almost not really a professional level, but almost. I can understand how taking bad photos happens very easily. So I will wait and see.
Yeah, so another side note, when it comes to the player jerseys, they don't have all of the players available. I know Atlanta tweeted out, Gator and Kodak both don't have jerseys available to purchase yet. And I'm sure there's some other players out there. I didn't look to see if Yunjao Lon's jersey is available, just because, his name was too long. And, maybe we'll get into the football theme where they just kind of like put that last letter on the sleeve. I don't know if that one's there. But, you may notice that some of the jerseys aren't available if you're looking for someone specifically. But I am looking forward to potentially, maybe picking up another Zachary jersey in regards to maybe a signed one to add to the Fusion University one that I have, would make sense. That's his next step. But I did actually make a purchase earlier, so I picked up the Hancho Spark home jersey, just the normal one. And then for the player jersey, I went with the Vancouver Titans home jersey for Bumper. So that was a long dilemma. I was like, okay, I really like Runaway. I don't really necessarily have a favorite player on Runaway or Vancouver Titans, as they are now known as. So it's just like, who am I going to pick? I mean, I would have been happy with anyone, and I eventually went with their main tank of Bumper, just because, he's definitely one of the more long-tenured players on the roster. And since that's been the role that I've been playing more so than not, that is what I went with. So, gotta stay true to what I'm currently playing in game. But that being said, yes, there have been a number of inconsistencies. I'll definitely post pictures whenever my Hancho Spark jersey comes in, so we can kind of see the differentials. But it does feel really weird seeing, all of these, behind-the-scenes things with the player jerseys, and then Fnatic releases these, and they're not the same. So I don't know if, the one that I'm going to get is going to be the one at Fnatic's is showing, if it's going to be, actual player jersey, if it's going to be something kind of in between the two. I have no idea. But either way, this is not going to be my only purchase for Overwatch League gear this year. Obviously, I'm going to use that 20% off code at some point. Probably pick up some more Titans gear, or maybe a Ryu Jaehan jersey. I don't know yet. I'll figure it out when I get there. But if you want to rep your team going into Season 2, you can get your shipping now. I believe it was 5 to 7 days for standard, and you can speed up the process if you dish out a little bit more. But I definitely agree when it comes to the actual variety. Outside of jerseys, there's a lot lacking there, but I do like that we have more options in regards to the jerseys. I just wish that some of the coloring on the text was better, because a lot of it on some of these darker jerseys just does not look that good on the back of the player jerseys.
No, and like I said, the inconsistencies kind of dissuaded me, so I'll wait and see. But like I said earlier, I'm happy that they have their own storefront at this point.
Yeah, so on a side note, we still do not have a timetable in regards to when the Blizzard gear store for EU is going to pop up for Fanatics. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be waiting with bated breath on that, because I've been seeing some of the screenshots where some of the shipping costs on the jerseys hikes the price up $40-50, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the actual Blizzard gear store was like that for a long time until they dropped the EU store. But I imagine with the market overseas that it will come very quickly, not like it did originally with the gear store. So we'll wait and see. For now, if you are in the EU, if you really need an expansion team jersey, you're gonna have to suck up the cost. But I would probably encourage you to wait, because I'm sure it'll be mid-season at the latest. And if you get the all access pass, they said that coupon's good until Halloween, so you got plenty of time to use it.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump to this week's main discussion, which will be our Overwatch League Season 2 host ranks, and we'll be starting from number 5 and working our way all the way up to the top. So Slambo is not here tonight, but as we go along, I will share his rankings as well. And I'm still waiting on one specific host, who I'm not going to call out by name, but he knows who he is, to post his rankings so we can do our overall, 7 host rankings, average it all out. Hopefully we'll have that by next Monday's show, so we can have that ready for you guys, and we can post it. We don't want to keep everyone in suspense.
Mob?
Yes, it does. Cool. One of the newer hosts on our network. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start with your number 5 team, Spider. Who do you have at that 5th position?
Well, your team, Soul Dynasty, or at least your old team. I don't know what you're planning for this season. If you're sticking with the Soulmate or if you're going full Runaway Titans. At this point, I don't know. Hippo asked in the chat, who did you pick for your team for Twitch? I picked the Spark because I had enough Dallas emotes at this point, so I just chose the Spark, and they're my second team at this point, so not surprising if you've watched the show recently. But I went with Soul because going into stage 1, we're going to be in a tank heavy meta. Tank heavy metas have always favored Soul, especially a meta where they can actually get away playing Ana at certain times because you have Ryu Jaehong. But we're still going to go into a Zen heavy meta at this point, but I still have Toby, who is an amazing Lucio player. So Lucio is highly played. And they hopefully solved their main tank problem by picking up Fisher in the off season. They also picked up Michelle and Jace to kind of boost the all around team. So at this point, I think Soul's going to be a fairly formidable team. I am giving them the benefit of the doubt again. I will probably get burned again, but I feel like they've kind of solved their problems as long as the team can, kind of synergize the way they used to. So I hope we see more Lunatic High and less Season 1 Soul. So that's why I put them at number 5.
I was trying so hard not to cringe when you were trying to pronounce Jexay.
Look, it's Jace. It's Jesse. It's Jace. I've heard casters call him Jace. They may be wrong, but whatever, I'm wrong too.
Well, anyways, at number 5, I have my other team, which you name dropped, that being Vancouver Titans. So, it goes without question that I've been a Runaway and a Lunatic High fanboy for years at this point. Runaway's coming over. I'm feeling a little bit better about them over Soul, primarily just due to the fact that I don't know how the aggression aspect is going to play into the style of Soul Dynasty. And Titans are coming in, they're coming off of a very good performance over Kondu Panthera, who, are now mostly Shanghai Dragons, and, a couple of them are over in the LA Gladiators. But Titans are coming in, they're coming in hot. And this is a team that has a lot of playtime against a lot of the Overwatch League talent already. Now, at the end of the day, yes, it is true, Runaway kind of had their moment after some of the best teams in Korea had already moved on. But Korea has always been the deepest pool in regards to Overwatch talent, and that really hasn't changed. It's really still true to this day, even with all of the kind of like reworks that are going on and rebuild phases that some of these contenders Korea teams are going through right now. So if you're Runaway, you're coming in at a good time, you face a lot of these teams, and you've already played these teams in different sort of metas. This has been a team that's been very good at dive. They were one of the best teams at triple tank, triple support in Contenders Korea this past season. So when it comes to adaptability of this team, I'm not too worried about what the meta is going to be, and I feel like we're going to get a similar effect to what we saw out of London Spitfire and New York Excelsior going into the inaugural season. Basically what happened is you had these powerhouse teams that had that built-in synergy already, and at least for the Korean teams that had this, they ran shot through a lot of people early on. The same cannot be said for Florida Mayhem, that didn't happen. Misfits didn't do so well.
Dallas.
Dallas as well, that's just NA and the EU problems. But all in all, Runaway is looking very good. They also picked up Repel from Element Mystic, so you really don't have that many issues in regards to the playability of these players. Now, the one thing that can hold Vancouver back is the fact that Vancouver doesn't necessarily have that star caliber player on this team. They don't have that superstar player. They don't have a CBLB. They don't have a Fleta or a Carpe or an EQO. But what you do have is you have players that are very good at each position, so there's not necessarily like a weak sort of spot on this team, so they're not easy to kind of expose in that case. So I'm looking forward to what the Titans can do, and I know there's some pretty lofty expectations, and for me, I just hope it's not going to be a similar situation to what we saw out of the Seoul Dynasty this past season.
Yeah, I mean, I will talk about them in a minute. So moving on to my number 4, I put the LA Gladiators. This is kind of a team that I had high hopes for going into the end of season 1 until the tank drama basically imploded them, and they still pulled off the Great Bamboozle, so that was something to watch. But overall, in the offseason, I think the Gladiators have made good moves. They got rid of their tank problem, hopefully, because Roar is going to be the answer. I mean, he has to be at this point. They picked up Decay, which was arguably one of the higher bidding wars that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they added Ripa, which is, purely to assist the support line. So I think, as long as they can buckle down, keep the synergy that they had developed, this is a team that is highly meta-proof as long as their front line can show up. And, they have the tools necessary to be a top-ranked team. That being said, I think this team is, on that fringe level, and I kind of, from 4 down, I think any of the teams can kind of shuffle their way up to that level, 4th place. I think that the top 3 right now are kind of the powerhouse. So 4 could go either way, but right now I'm sticking with the Gladiators purely on the basis of, just what we saw last season, where they were able to make a bad situation and actually, turn it into a workable situation. They didn't win, but at least they were, kind of making up for iRemix as a tank. And the best thing I can say to kind of accentuate this argument is look at the Gladiators at the beginning of the season, look at the Gladiators at the end of the season. They were basically the same team, but they were playing on a whole different level just based on the talent around iRemix and how they evolved over the season. So I feel like this team is still going to grow. They're still going to be good. And hopefully they can, keep the next level strats coming.
So at number 4, I had the Philadelphia Fusion. Now, this is a team that made maybe not too many additions. They did sign Elk, who was on Fusion University, to a 2-way contract. And, it's important to note, Fusion University went out, they picked up Car from Second Wind. So when it comes to Elk, I do not expect Elk to play for Fusion University in Contenders. He's going to be on the main roster from this point on. Now, in regards to who they got rid of, we saw Hotba go over to the Guangzhou Charge. Shadowburn is now on Paris Eternal. They got rid of Dayfly. His performance was so bad that Neptuno, he played despite having having some health issues himself. Got rid of Joe Meister, and now Joe Meister is coaching collegiate, which is awesome. So there's another transition there for him. And for me, at the end of the day, I'm never going to doubt the DPS line of Philadelphia Fusion. Carpe and EQO are a 1-2 knockout combination, without question. But Elk is coming in. This is a player that has been on mixed rosters, and he was really the person that enabled Fusion University. He's a shot caller, and I hope he's going to be getting the nod. I'm not going to say more so than Neptuno, but I feel like with how prominent Elk has been and how successful he has been and just his in-game capabilities and leadership role, that he's going to be an easy fit onto the main roster of the Fusion. Now, for me, when it comes to the Fusion, one of the biggest question marks at the end of the day, might be on the tank line because, they got rid of Papa. You're not going to have that Tracer pocket special to, throw people off, which, really did some wonders for the Philadelphia Fusion. But I feel like, they picked up Christopher as a coach here, and I feel like he's going to find a happy medium for this tank line. There were certain situations where Fraggy was too aggro. There were also situations where Sato was too passive. So there's going to be a lot of fine balance in here on the tank line, and this is going to be one of those teams where as long as the tank line is going to be able to open up the space, the DPS is always going to be there to perform. Now, long-term here, the question mark is, can this team actually close out series earlier when it comes to the big games? Because there were too many situations where, at every level of play for Philadelphia, they would always kind of be in the trenches, through the thick of things, in as long of a series as possible. And at the season playoff time, that definitely wore Carpe out a little bit. So I'm hoping, they're going to be able to ease it back a little bit. Maybe we won't see as much burnout from some of their players, because when Philadelphia Fusion are on, this team is one of the best in the league, but there's been times where they've just been so inconsistent where I would not be surprised if this is going to be the team that maybe falls to that, 6-7 spot. But for right now, I'm feeling pretty good with the moves that they have made, and there's been a couple of other teams that might have made bigger moves per se, like the team that you would just mention in the LA Gladiators. But for now, Fusion are sitting pretty good.
By far. So what did Slambo have as his number 4?
Well, first off, at 5, Slambo actually had the Titans. And at 4, Slambo went with the Soulmates of the Soul Dynasty. Now, I wish Slambo was here, so, we could get into his mind about choosing, his original team over, the team that we all fanboy over. But unfortunately, we're gonna have to wait to hear his reasonings next week. But for the most part, with the top 5, we have some similar teams. Really, the only difference is I'm the only one that doesn't have the Dynasty in the top 5.
I actually am switching part of my top 5, and it's the next one coming up. So I didn't want you to say something that wasn't true, because I haven't changed it on the spreadsheet yet, because I ran out of time at work today. But my number 3 is the Vancouver Titans, which originally had NYXL as number 3. So spoiler alert, you'll hear about them in a second. But I moved the Vancouver Titans down. You talked a good bit about them, so I'm not going to go over all of that again. But I do feel like they're a really strong team. I feel like they have all the tools to be higher up. And like I said, I initially had them at number 2. The only problem is they're not in LA yet. And I think that's going to affect them.
They are as of today.
Yeah. So they just got there. So, and I think that is going to affect them because the league starts in 10 days. So they need to get adjusted to jet lag. They need to get, comfortable. They need to, do all that. And that has definitely affected their scrim ability. Now they have scrimmed other teams overseas, when other teams are overseas and stuff like that. We've kind of gone over that. You've gone over that in Heroes Never Die. So they haven't not been scrimming AL level teams. They just have not been scrimming AL level teams for probably the past week or two. And I'm sure they found, suitable teams to scrim outside of that, because there's definitely some tier 2 teams that are probably AL level compared to the bottom of the list that we've gone over.
Runaway.
Like Runaway, or as Adenar calls them, the Runaways, which you refuse to say.
Nope.
But yeah, I had to drop Vancouver Titans down from 2 just because of their late entry. I still feel like they're going to be a really strong team. I still fully support the Runaway roster. I'm a big fan of Bumper and Janu, Jay Janu, however you want to pronounce it, as the front line. That is a phenomenally stacked front line. You have Haskell, Hureg, and Stitch bringing up DPS. And I'm excited to see Slime play. Slime is my highlight, because Slime is the team-based Lucio that kind of sneaks in the Reddit Lucio whenever he gets the chance. So he is the one that you're going to see booping 3 or 4 people off the map out of nowhere. So I am really excited to see this team play. But because of their late entry to the US, I had to drop them down a spot.
All right. Well, at number 3, I have the LA Gladiators, and I remember earlier I'm trying to remember like how many weeks ago it was. It was at least a couple of weeks ago, but Gladiators basically came out and they try to like kind of like trying to be modest about expectations in regards to the community, because a lot of the community is feeling like, okay, LA Gladiators, they made some powerhouse moves. This is going to be one of the best teams in the Overwatch League. They were modest about how they think they're going to do, which I feel like is smart. They replaced Fisher, they went out and they signed Contu Panthera's main tank in Roar, which, Roar is definitely, no slouch himself. So they got Roar, they got the K, who were two of the more prominent members of that KDP roster, who were the runner-ups to Runaway, the original Runaway roster this past season in Contenders Korea Season 3. And they got Reaper, as you mentioned. They also signed our boy Panker to a 2-way contract. So he'll have the option to serve as the backup main tank, and he'd also compete for Gladiators Legion. And they got some of the players that didn't necessarily have like a good position on the team. IREMX, he did just okay. He wasn't like one of the standout tanks. We saw him go over to Sky Foxes, where he was like one of 87 players on the team, and they kind of shit the bed, and now they're back in trials, and they're doing okay so far. So we'll see. They do great in trials, not so good in contenders, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon.
Nope.
But we got the finished trio. We went through that whole debacle of the Gladiators trying to give everyone a heart attack collectively at the same time, which was, probably not the best PR move, because everyone was just like, everyone's like, oh, how could you do that to us? No one was actually talking about the player. But you don't go out of your way to sign one of the most contested free agents on the market in Decay without having the intent to play him. So for me, I'm just really curious to see what sort of DPS combination we're going to be seeing out of the Gladiators, because the K does have a lot of crossover in regards to the hero pool with someone like Surefour. And with the way that Surefour has improved over this past year, it's really hard to argue benching Surefour and then just playing Decay, with hydration. I can't imagine that being the combo. Decay and Surefour are both very solid players, and, this could be one of the best DPS duos in the league that could potentially rival, Bird Rain and Prophet, or any sort of iteration that you can come up with New York Excelsior, who can really do anything if, maybe they're not specialized in map-specific stuff. But the Gladiators, they got rid of some of the dead weight. They're still going to do pretty good on communication. Bishu will still be there to do a lot of the translating. But for me, I wonder where this is going to leave Void. Void didn't necessarily have, the best show-in this past season, especially on the Devo role. And, he's always kind of been more known for Zarya. So maybe the Goat's meta will be his time to shine. But for now, that's my one question mark. The front line is looking good outside of that backup position, and I feel like the firepower on that DPS line, as long as Roar is able to keep up the aggression and play a similar playstyle to what Fisher was bringing, the opportunities are going to be there, and I expect, some very good performances out of the Gladiators moving forward.
I mean, it comes down to who's the better Brigida player, Surefour or Decay. But with the nerfs to Diva and some of the changes, we could see double hit scan become a possibility on some maps. So we could definitely see Decay and Surefour line up, because Surefour's out also one of those players who is flexible. Like we don't really think about it that much, because we think about his Widow play, we think about his Tracer play, but Surefour is actually pretty good at Genji. He's actually pretty good at Pharah as well. Maybe not to the level of some of the other players, but he is competent on that level. He's not going to come out in AKM Blade in most situations. So, him and Decay together is scary. Surefour and, really any combination of the DPS that they have is scary. And that's why I rated them so highly. is I feel like this team is set up to do well. And like you said, Void has always done better on Zarya, so they have the option to like fully slot in a GOATS roster at that point. You just throw whoever's better on Brigitte, and you have 3 tanks that fit in perfectly. You throw Roar on Reinhardt, you have Void on Zarya, and then you have Bishu on Diva, and you have a solid tank line. You don't have a lot of flexibility, but you have a very solid GOATS comp if you want to stick to GOATS. But this team by no means needs to do that. So what about Slambro before I get into my number 2?
Well, Slambo and I are ingredients from slots 3 through 1. He also had the LA Gladiators.
There you go. All right, so for my number 2, shouldn't be a surprise because I said it earlier, is NYXL. Mm-hmm. And for all the reasons I said earlier, they have ridiculous level of DPS. They have the stand-ins from season 1, Libero, SBB, and Pine is still there to be played on one map and look utterly ridiculous 50% of the time and utterly useless the other 50% of the time. But they kind of brought up some more firepower in Flower and Nene. So this is a team. We were just talking about the Gladiators having a scary DPS roster. This is by far the scariest DPS roster because you can slot in any of these players and you're going to have to worry about all of them. So it's, and the rest of the NYXL is still behind them. I mean, you have Mono and Meko, which is a strong tank duo, and I've kind of been down on Meko, but I don't want to take that away from him. He's still one of the best off tanks in the league. When I say like Meko is possibly the weak link on this team, that's like saying, like Tom Brady could be the weak link on the Patriots, which obviously he's not, but it's that level of caliber. Like, okay, well, what does that really mean in relation to the rest of the team? You still have, Ark and Animo who never die. And then you have Jonak, who also never dies, but also kills everyone. So you have basically another DPS on the team, and you have a highly competitive Zen meta at the beginning of the stage with Zen GOATS, because that's basically the configuration of GOATS that they've all decided on is the best currently. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have Jonak on that, Zenyatta. So this team is scary no matter which way you look at them. The only thing I'm worried about is if they continue their season 1 trend where they kind of got stuck in their ways. I don't want to say the S word because obviously we found out that's not true. Like they were having problems with the meta, so they need to be a little more flexible when it comes to comps and stuff like that. But with this roster, they shouldn't have that problem. They shouldn't have had it in season 1 either, but they definitely shouldn't have it now. So I think this is definitely your number 2 team.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that basically across all of our Overwatch League Network hosts, we have New York Excelsior at that 2 spot, at least between the 3 of us. And I think like the only person that doesn't have them second across the landscape is Ren, who actually has NYXL ranked number 1, which... I definitely feel without question, you can make an argument for NYXL still being the top team. Now, that being said, we all followed Season 1. We kind of saw them kind of stick to their guns with what they were playing. Maybe they didn't do too good in the meta, or maybe they just refused to play it because they thought that, they were unbeatable. Who knows? But NYXL, they called up Flower and Nene from XL2. And, Nene, a lot of times, we saw him a lot on the Sombra, on XL2 Academy. We saw him in the past play a little bit of Zarya. So, this does give them that GOATS potential. My thing is, I'm really curious to see how Jonak is going to do in the GOATS meta, primarily because when we talk about the GOATS meta, a lot of the pressure is put on the Zarya player. Of course, a lot of shield pressure is going to be done by the Zenyatta, getting that Discord orb on the Reinhardts. But I just want to see, how much the meta is going to dictate the ability that Jonak can enable the New York Excelsior. Because, With the current meta, it could be looking a lot different in regards to just the overall effectiveness that Jonak can have. Now, that's not going to take anything away from Jonak, because he's still going to frag out. He's going to find his opportunities. But I feel like his overall kill feed potential might go down a little bit, but who knows? The thing is, at the end of the day, you have a team here that legit has 6 DPS on the roster. They're very interchangeable. The drawback is, when it comes to Flower, when it comes to Nene, Libero, Pine, Sapiobi, a lot of them have a very similar hero pool. A lot of them play Hitscan, primarily Widowmaker. At least with Libero, you have some other options, because we have seen him come out on the Hanzo and a couple of the other snipers. But if we ever see, like, double sniper or even triple sniper in some cases, NYXL is going to have the scariest combination at the DPS line with that specific type of meta. Now, that being said, you went through the support line who, Arc just felt like he never died, and Animo, I feel like out of all of the backups in the league, was by far the best backup at any easily. Position. When you compare him to the field, like, there's just no contest. And it's scary to think about, and it doesn't really matter who you put on that support line, they're going to have every tool that they need. So it becomes a matter of, okay, we have Flower, who they've been hyping up for such a long time. We knew he was going to be in the Overwatch League, but it was too young at the time, and this was coming off of his World Cup performance, not this past year, but the year prior, when he put on that Widowmaker clinic. He went to XL2, and, he was dealing with a lot of, East-West Coast servers, and he was getting subbed in and out just due to what server they were playing on, so we didn't get to see Flower at his best at that level. So, there's been a little bit of talk of, okay, what Flower is going to show up? Is it going to be the clinic master that we gotta see in the World Cup? Or is maybe the just overall amount of firepower on this team going to maybe take away some of that flourish that we get to see from him? I don't know, but I'm really excited to see what New York Excelsior is going to do, because at the end of the day, you can basically have any sort of combination of DPS, and they're going to contest with every team in the league. It's just a matter of, are they going to be the ones that are going to dictate the meta? Are they going to reinvent it? Or are they going to get too stubborn at times and just try to play their game and then it just not working out? I don't know, but I feel like with all of the pieces that they have, it's very easy for them to be the best team in the league. They're probably going to come out
by far
a very similar performance. I'm expecting London. London earlier on might struggle a bit more if it is a GOATS meta, and I feel like the GOATS meta will probably benefit NYXL more, but for now, I'm going to give both of these teams the benefit of the doubt, and that's why I do have NYXL at 2, and, London, who we're going to talk about next, across the board, is basically number 1 for a lot of our hosts.
Yeah, I mean, they're Season 1 champions, so, it would be really silly to not slot them at number 1 based on the moves that they made in the offseason, which weren't many. I mean, they basically got rid of Closer. They finished trimming the fat, which they started at the end of Season 1. And then they picked up a few backups in Open Division Krillin and then Guard. So, honestly, they didn't make a whole lot of changes to make us say, oh boy, they really got worse in the offseason. The only thing you can really argue is possibly they aren't great for the GOATS meta, but that may not be true. I mean, Prophet has shown that he's highly flexible, and he used to play Brigida in Stage 4, and he played it very well. So I don't think this team's going to have a lot of problems in the meta, but I think they've gotten themselves to a nice level of homeostasis. They figured out, they trimmed that 12-man roster down to what they needed to. They worked out their internal kinks. They figured out, the coaching situation, which apparently was a problem in Season 1, which caused some of the ups and downs and the substitutions and stuff like that. So honestly, there's no reason not to put them at number 1 right now until we see otherwise. They're not like the Fusion, who went into the finals last year where we're like, boy, the Fusion's a really good team, when they decide to be a really good team, but they have valleys, whereas London at that point, they had their valley earlier in the season, and they struggled a little bit in stage 4, but once they kind of got their running start, they looked really formidable in the playoffs. Like, they had a little bit of a problem initially with Gladiators, and I think that's more so Gladiators kind of 900 IQing them, but once they kind of broke through that, like, there was no stopping them, and I feel like they're going to do the same thing in season 1 initially. Like, I think they're just going to keep that running, and they've set the bar. Like, they're the team that, like you said, NYXL is close, but they're the ones that the other teams have to say, like, all right, we need to play at London's level.
It's really crazy, too, to kind of, like, look back and just think, well, they have an Open Division player on their Overwatch League roster. That's just one of the other, like, things that we haven't gotten to see. So there's a very strong possibility that, yes, they have Badosian on this roster. He's going to frag out. And then you have Krillin, who is, like, this great unknown. So none of us are quite sure, like, how he's going to do, if he's actually going to see play time, or if he's just going to be, like, a long-term type of investment, because we have seen how prominent these flex support players are going to be, and especially Zenyatta in particular, which is what Krillin is known for. So, for me, when you kind of... The best thing to do is compare London and New York. Now, London, early on, this is a team that basically had, they had GC Busan, and then they had Call of Duty Panthera. They signed both rosters, who were two of the top teams out of Contenders Korea at the time. And then, they're just going to throw people out there. We'll see what happens. They tried, running both teams. They tried doing an iteration of combining the rosters. So there was a lot of feeling out process. And then towards the end of the season, that's when we got to see them drop some of the players. They condensed it down to 7 players. And... there was a little bit of time there where London was having to adjust to the Brigida compositions, where, Prophet would go over to Brigida, and, early on, he was definitely one of the more shakier Brigidas in the league, but by the end of the season, he was definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum.
He was Fragita at that point. He was the Jay Jonak of Brigidas at that point. Like, Mickey was the defensive Brigida, and he was definitely the offensive Brigida. So, yeah, he was fun to watch by the end of Stage 4.
Absolutely. So, at the end of the day, London is the team that, you look at their tank line, and, there's really not a hole there. You look at the support line, and it's just as good as New York Excelsiors, despite, even having that unknown on that roster. So, for me, I'm expecting a very similar performance out of the MVP in Prophet. But at the end of the day, Guard's going to come in and, maybe he's going to, give Birdrain a little bit of rest here and there. And he comes in. Maybe Guard will be playing a Sombra, because that's basically what he's been mostly known for when he was on Element Mystic. But Birdrain is definitely going to have more consistent performances throughout the season, because there were a little bit too many times throughout the season where Birdrain would kind of fall quiet. And it was kind of similar to what was going on with Fleta, in a sense that, earlier on, like, we saw Fleta be the meta, in, like, Stage 1. Fleta was looking amazing, and then, of course, Dynasty had some other stuff going on, but so did the Spitfires. So, for me, I just need a little bit more consistency, and I feel like that's going to be what brings Spitfire to the forefront again going into this new season.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say any more about them. They're a solid team all around. I have high expectations for them, and I hope they continue through that. Honestly, like we said, the only team that I'm currently putting up there, on the same level would be NYXL. I think Vancouver can make a run at it if they run away with it. I don't know. I struggled so hard not to make that pun, but I had to. But all in all, like I said, the top 3 teams to me are kind of set right now. going into the season. And obviously, like last season, we're going to be radically wrong for some of these teams. Like Justice could finish, 11th instead of 20th. Like there's possibilities for teams to synergize in ways we don't know. So, the going off of the past experience has always basically bit the whole community in the ass every single time. So take these ratings with a grain of salt. Like I hope we made a good, compelling argument for them. But at the end of the day, like as soon as game one is played for every one of these teams, we're going to have a much better look than anything we could speculate on at this point. So I'm excited just to get the season started. Like I am just pumped that we got through the list. Season start next week, so we're going to have one more show before the season officially starts. So I am hoping that we can come in and say, boy, those community countdown games were nothing like what we expected. Gooshway came out and he played Widowmaker and destroyed everybody and stuff like that. So I can't express the level of excitement I am going into season 2. Like we were all pumped for season 1, but we were all like tentatively optimistic. Like we were like, all right, is this gonna work? Like how are the games gonna go? Like stuff like that. Like we all kind of had our favorites, but as season 1 came on, they figured it out. They figured the games out. The quality of games got much better. Like look at Dallas versus Seoul, that first match we got, in stage 1, season 1, and then look at basically any of the non-Shanghai Dragon stage 4 matches, and go look at Shanghai versus Florida in stage 4, and you'll see like a higher quality match. So I am just pumped for season 2.
Absolutely. So with that being said, next week, depending on what's happening with, and I'm going to air quote, preseason, we're either going to cover that or we might have a heavier focus on specific team storylines to kind of follow going into season 2. And of course, we'll take a look at the opening week schedule, highlight some of the marquee matches, and basically just go from there. And then, we'll kind of get back to our normal routine where we're not having to jump around quite as much so we can pinpoint specifically on the Overwatch League moving forward. But season 2 is almost here. I cannot wait. And, maybe we'll plan out some more watch parties for the marquee matches. Of course, we'll have Fantasy Overwatch League, which, by the way, tomorrow we have Soul Drink, or Matt, his other name, from highnoon.gg, which is the primary Fantasy Overwatch League option this season. So he'll be guessing on OWL by the numbers tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific time on this channel. So if you guys have any sort of Fantasy Overwatch League questions, be sure to have them ready. It's going to be an episode you don't want to miss. It's going to be a stacked house. We're going to have 5 people on the show. It's going to be a pain in the butt to moderate, but I'm greatly looking forward to it. And I hope everyone is super excited for the new season, because we're almost here. It feels like it's been an eternity. Man, it's crazy. We're so close. But
let's go, dude.
With that being said, Spider, let's go ahead and close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for insight on how we can make for a better listening experience for you guys. We also have a way where you can find additional Overwatch content, whether it's Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro podcast, that's over on our website. That, of course, being Overwatch Recall. So if you go to our website, owlnshow.com/OWRecall, you can find our podcast directory there. And then every Sunday night on Twitter, we release with a weekly recall, which is the episodic listen of all the latest podcasts that are available. And, there's some weeks there's anywhere from like 20 to like 29 new podcast episodes. So be sure to keep an eye on that. If you would like to support us further, you can do so by supporting our podcast network via Patreon, where, we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. So if you go to patreon.com/OWL network, you can learn more there. But Spider, we have a number of ways where our listeners can get a hold of us, so why don't you let them know how they can do that?
Sure. If you'd like to email the show, you could do so at contact@owlnshow.com. Our website is www.owlnshow. Twitter is @owlnshow. YouTube is youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. I am currently working on a video for the new map that will drop when the map goes live. So if you haven't checked out the Paris map, go check it out because it's phenomenal, even being 2CP. But if you don't want to check it out, wait for the video. Discord is discord.me/OWLN show. Twitch, if you listen to our audio, I would highly advise watching the show. It is on Twitch TV/OWLN show. We have multiple shows during the week, and it's growing, it seems like daily now. But you can support the show because we are a Twitch affiliate. So, subscribe, get a network emoticon, all that stuff. But if you're curious about our various shows, we have our Monday night show, which is what you're currently listening to, which is Overwatch League Network. That airs at 7 p.m. PT. Core Overwatch League show, if you're interested in the pro scene, this is where you get your news. Tuesday nights is our fantasy show, Overwatch League by the numbers. It is Tuesdays at 6 p.m. PT. Like Totem said, tomorrow will be a extremely packed house, which I will absolutely not be trying to bribe Matt for a win this year. So you guys stop making fun of me.
Never gonna happen.
Wednesdays, we have our variety Overwatch show, which is Heroes Never Die. It is Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PT. And then Thursdays through Saturdays, we have a variety of host streams, depending on what's going on, how we're feeling. Nothing set in stone, but we will try to, always, one of us generally streams every week. You have a draft coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that this Friday?
Yeah, that is going to be Friday night. I want to say we said 7 p.m. Pacific time. So I don't know if you planned on streaming, but we're streaming on our channel then.
No, I actually have, my birthday is Saturday, so I actually have plans Friday night, which don't involve my birthday at all. But it's two unrelated things that make me very busy this weekend. So this was like the perfect weekend for you guys to do that. But we do need to get together by the end of the month to do our placements on our off roll accounts.
Yeah, I need to finish leveling.
Yeah, Edinar is up to 20 or 21. I don't know what he did today, but he was like 20, 21 on Saturday. So he's getting very close. My account has been ready because you guys are slackers. And you need to catch up. So, long story short, check out our host streams. Friday will be the fantasy draft, and there will be a whole lot of Overwatch podcasters in here yelling and screaming about various things. So finally, to wrap it up, if you really want to support the show, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/OWL Network. We have various tiers from $1 up to $10 a month. It just helps keep the light on. Like, it's the best way to support the show, and anything you can do to help support us, we would greatly appreciate. If you would like to contact me on Twitter and tell me how bad my power rankings are, or just yell at me for various reasons, it is at SpiderGD. Slambo, who is not feeling well, send him the well wishes, is at Slambo Overwatch. Totem, bring us home. Where can they find you?
Well, I'm over on Twitter at TimothyDrunkCTR, and of course, if I'm live on Twitch, it will always be on our podcast channel at twitch.tv/OWLN show. But with that being said, guys, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us again tonight for another episode of Overwatch League Network. This has been episode number 66. I am your host, Totally Drunk, joined by my co-host, Spider, and we will see you guys back tomorrow night for our next episode of OWL by the numbers. And if not then, we'll see you next time, guys. Have a good night.